You are listening to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 85, Story Above Success. Today we talk about how GMs often overlook success of their games to execute stories they want to tell. We discuss how GMs fall into this pitfall. We also discuss why you should change or mold your story to your player style to ensure success of your game. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me in person, he'll execute a story with great success, Jared.
Well, thank you.
How you doing, Jared?
Not bad. How you been?
I'm doing good. I got to see Nick recently. Went over to his place for a fight recently, and
To clarify, a boxing match.
yes,
To watch a boxing match.
Pay-per-view boxing, and he had us over, and it was just really good to see him because I hadn't seen him in almost 2 years at this point.
Yeah.
And he's doing real good. I mean, like, his family's doing good. I don't know if you've been over to his house in Geneva.
No, not the one in Geneva.
Yeah, no, that's he moved out of that townhouse into that house, and he's doing great.
I would expect nothing less. Yeah. You know.
He's like, we're running a petting zoo over here. He's got like a rabbit. He's got
shit.
He's got
Running a petting zoo.
And the most unbelievable thing is he had Gus still there. I couldn't believe that.
That dog is as old as the hills. I remember when he got that dog back in college.
16 years old.
That dog is fucking old as shit.
But before we get into the topic here today, I wanted to shout out Chris. I know that you sent us an email recently. It's been a while since we've talked with you and heard from you, so we're glad that you're listening to the podcast still. You talked about our social podcast here, and I think we're going to end up doing an episode to your point here, which is giving more concrete examples on how to incorporate, if you want to role play out the social situation, how do you incorporate that person's merits and stuff into the situation. So, like, let's say the person is the merit ridiculously attractive. Like, how does that factor in to your social situation?
Well, that's an easy one to factor in.
Or the person is good with words. Like, how does that factor in to if you're going to play the situation and kind of working with your GM and kind of playing that situation out, or even just kind of incorporating different dice rolls. We can talk about dice rolls and stuff, and we'll play out a couple situations when we actually do that episode. So again, it was really good to hear from you.
It was great to hear from you.
And we appreciate that you're listening.
Now I want to bite into that topic, of course. Storyteller EDD.
Of course. But today our topic is something different. We are going to be talking about story above success. Okay? I said that you always run a successful story, but...
That's hilarious.
I think, a lot of GMs a lot of newer GMs or GMs that are out of practice, I should say, will tend to run stories, and they want to see their story executed more so than their players experiencing the world and working through their story. So I feel like that's a big trap that you can kind of fall into.
Huge trap. It's a huge trap. Giant trap.
It's a big pitfall trap.
Worst kind of pitfall trap. No, it's not the worst kind. Okay. I will take on my side to this. Remember, always the golden rule. The players are center stage, right? If this is a play of role-playing, right, your story goes on. You always have to remember the spotlight needs to remain on your players. It's not the story. It's not the director. It's not the pages that are going to be remembered. It's going to be the experiences between the players and the story, the interaction between those two. So I am always, on the side of the players. I gotta remain player centric, not story centric. So I guess I would always say, success above the story. I guess I'm not.
I think that what you want to do is you want to have a story that is set up for success.
Yeah. So to do that, I mean, really, what you need to remember is that with any role-playing environment, everything is subject to change. It's fluid in a given moment because of what players decide to do. The one of the best things, I hate to keep harping on this episode, but KYP is knowing your players. That knowing your players and knowing what drives them, what they want to do, is really very pivotal to predicting their actions.
And the session 0 helps you, if you've never played with your players, will help you determine that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a weird switch, that video conferencing has really brought to role playing. Because think about it, back in the day, you had to actually know the person. Now you can have a group of people that you have never met in your life. Well, you could do comic shops. Comic shops, when sometimes they allowed game or LARP. Okay, I lied. I just nailed 2 examples of how it was back in the day, role playing with people you didn't know. So one of the pitfalls of many storytellers is that they fall in love with their own story, right? Really, the truest sense of role playing is like I said earlier, the interaction of the player with the story, right? It's the choices of the player, that really determines what the outcome is going to be in a given situation. I like to write. So one of the things that you might be sitting back and going, well, Jared, you write epilogues and you write conclusions to scenes. Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I find that putting a concluding scene or an ending together is fantastic. It really helps me punctuate. But here's what I also do, is that I remain flexible, right? If I put it in my writing, the killing stroke slashed across his brow, cutting off.
You did do that. You've done that before.
I have, and it was not good.
It showed when you executed your ending. It showed that it was like, boy.
Okay, Jared.
You didn't give a crap what we did. You already had to figure it out.
I already had to figure it out. You're already going to win. And that's a shame. That's a shame. Nowadays, what I do is I lie to my players on the spot. First off, I tend to only write on things that I'm certain of. He is going to die, right? Like I make sure like the bad guy, he's going to die. Right? They're not going to capture him and bring him back. He's too bad of a guy. He's too evil to be captured. From Star Wars.
I know.
Mace Windu.
Yes.
Flexible.
I hear you.
Just like the Jedi are morally flexible. See, they're not fucking priests. They are morally flexible as shit. You got a Grand Master being like, no, fuck that. We're going to cut this bitch in half. Just like you have to remain morally flexible. So I only write it from positions nowadays that I know are going to come to fruition. I make sure not to write in like the killing blow, slashes half his head off. Because what if it was the archer who takes him out? So, I mean, I make sure that I don't write for things that are very fluid at the end. You know what I mean?
Anybody could kill him. Okay.
Anybody could kill him. I just make sure that it's after the point that he is dead, is when the scene initiates, the written scene.
We don't talk about the battle wounds he sustained.
We don't talk about the battle wounds that he sustained. You have to be vague in that area because you're not sure if they're gonna slash him with swords, they're gonna push him off a cliff. You don't know, and that's the glory of role playing, and that's really why we come to this podcast, to level up our gaming, to level up our GMing, is to take 20 years of experience of I've done this. I have literally wrote out like
you wrote out a scene about, and there in the end of the scene, it talked about how we felled the opponent, and I was like, like that's not how it happened.
Wait a second. That is not how it happened at all, sir. And that's what you need to do. If you're going to write out epilogues like I do or conclusions like I do, you have to be vague in the outcome, or you have to make sure that there's vaguity in the outcome where you can be flexible. You know what I mean? You can't be like, the final round penetrates his heart, because what if the final round freaking blows off his head? It had nothing to do with his heart. You know, when you could just write in, you know, thump, 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 thump. His heartbeat stops. You know, right then I've completely ignored what the killing blow was, because there could have been any outcome. They could have pushed him off a cliff. His heart is still going to slow down and stop. Unless, you know, no, even getting stabbed, your heart might keep going. I don't know. I'm not a, we can get Allie in here, you know, she'll provide us with the medical advice.
That's all right.
She had to pass a lot of courses in case a patient like tries to croak in the middle of one of her sessions. She had to pass a course for that. What do you do if your patient just tries to up and die on you?
Keep that son of a bitch alive.
Compressions, except the American Heart Association keeps changing that shit. So that's one thing to be aware of. So when you're writing your end story, because you know everyone knows who listens to this podcast, I utilize backwards design methodology, which is I work my way from the ass of the story, the very end, and I work my way to the forward. You know, I know that I wanted to end on this, you know, overlooking tower, you know, of the land of Verdun. I guess Verdun now apparently.
You had set it up where we were going to do the showdown with your mage and Vodthane in a mage tower. I mean, like, we knew where he was. Yeah. I'm leaving that tower. You're like, it's going to happen here.
It's going to happen, and there's kind and gentle ways to guide your players towards that tower. Like, he ain't leaving that tower. He ain't leaving that tower for shit. You know what I mean? He's got mystical protections. Unless my players really go off the rails and are like, yeah, we're gonna, you know, get some artillery and we're just gonna shell the foundation and let that tower just come down on itself. Okay, well, at least I have a session of you guys getting artillery. All right, then I can rewrite my ending. If that's going to be my plan, and I'm going to allow my players to go through with this, I'm going to put some roadblocks in the way of you guys getting a howitzer. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to do some serious maintenance over the week. There's going to be some troubles getting your hands on the goddamn thing. Well, hell, you could buy a historical howitzer, but here's the thing. You got to find a guy who can restore it and do all this shit, and I'll make sure that it lasts like at least a session or two. I would say maybe half a session, actually, because you don't want your players getting bored of like, really, Jared? It's going to take us like 8 days to get a hold of this thing. I mean, I could always respond, you are attempting to get a hold of military artillery. You know, nothing simple about that. You can't just walk onto a base and be like, can I borrow one of those?
Oh, yeah, we got 3 of them.
Shit. You're a taxpayer. Here you go. Thanks, guys. That would be awesome.
I'll have back by Sunday, promise.
Promise. Get down with your bad self. So, you know, in that case, extreme example, you have to find ways to. You might just ditch your whole epilogue entirely. You know, and that's the killer part. You know, it hurts to do that sometimes, where you've got work that you put in, time, sweat, tears. You had music all planned out. You sat there for 2 hours, literally building the music to that epilogue, and your players go left. Too bad. So sad.
Yo, dad.
Yo, dad?
There's a joke about like a son who went to college kept asking his dad for money. He would always send really detailed letters, and then at the very end, he wrote, "No mun, no fun, yo son." And his dad wrote back, "So sad, too bad, yo dad."
No fun, yo son. Okay, now I get it. Now our listeners hopefully also get it, because I was like, what? So it does suck to take those hours of work that he put in and toss it out the window and go, they're going to blow it up with a howitzer.
But you might not have to necessarily throw everything out the window.
You might not have to. Maybe they find him in the rubble and he's still alive, and the thump, 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 thump. Because people can survive tower collapses.
Again, we only...
a little weird saying, but...
We only talk about, the one place that you really can control everything is the opening in your gathering. I mean, after you leave the opening scene, that's the first scene, the only scene that you truly have full control over. You have a lot of control over your ending, but you have to be, you might have to change the setting. You might have to change the method in which your villain dies. Or you might have to change the way in which your heroes ride off into the sunset. Like there's all sorts of things that can change there, but for the most part, your theme at the end of it should remain intact, and your epilogue can be unchanged effectively unless the players walk away.
The epilogue is pretty solid. Especially if you've. The only thing is that's hard is writing an epilogue. Where really. You've
if it's connected to an event there in the ending, then you got a problem.
Then you got a problem. Again, leave vagaries. Introduce things that are solid and tangible that they had to go meet. That they had to go see the wizard to get the emerald key. So you're going to talk about the wizard and that they returned the emerald key to the wizard as promised, because you knew that was going to be a condition of success. That the wizard would not let go of the emerald key without a promise that they would return it. And then you can write in the heroes, abiding their honor, return the emerald key. And then you might say, Jared, what about that damn trickster halfling who pockets it and replaces it with a different emerald key? Then you ad-lib. I'm sorry. That's the best defense you've got, unless you want to rewrite it, or you can ad-lib it, where you're like, with honor, they return the emerald key to the wizard, despite the attempts of the halfling to give him a forgery, which the wizard knew immediately was a fake. Too bad, so sad. So there's vagaries, and that you have to leave it open. Because, again, the story can't trump what the players have done. What the players have done has to take central stage. That's why the epilogue for the game Elders that Aaron, Brian, and I participated in over the course of 2 years. That's why it really just hit home, because when I wrote it, I literally wrote it taking people that they had met along the way and experiences that they had. They were concrete. They were history, right? There was no changing the fact that when they met, one particular NPC, that they promised him he would ride again. There was no change in that. That was history. They had promised him that. So when you are looking at story, and if you are locking in your players and you're saying, no, you've got to hit plot point A, there has to be a rising action. You need to go back to the balance that's inherent in role-playing. Are my players having fun? I don't give a shit if there's not an appropriate rising action, as long as my players are laughing, having fun, and have smiles on their faces when they leave my table. That is my gauge. Whether or not, and that's I hate to be rather always ripping on Tolkien, but sorry.
Gonna do it again. Here we are.
I'm gonna do it again. If you are like, no, I want my story to be the fourth incarnation. I don't even know how many books Lord of the Rings had. I think 3 Lord of the Rings strictly. It was supposed to be the fourth reincarnation. I wanted it to go that way. Guess what? You can't have that. I'm going to tell you right now, as a storyteller of 20 plus years, you can't have it. You can't be Tolkien, because you can't control your players to that level. And if you are controlling your players to that level, you need to do an evaluation of whether or not your players are having fun. And you need to do an honest evaluation.
Yeah, I would argue that your players probably aren't.
You know what? I can't say that, a table in Singapore doesn't love it that way.
Listen, there's some exception to the rule. There's some exception to everybody who likes that, because everybody likes different story elements. Ken, for example, loved the idea of, and this is something that he loved through narrative reading too, is that, this concept of you being a side kind of protector piece or observer to a greater power that's arising. Okay. And he loved that story. Okay. I couldn't care less for that story. I think that that's the most disengaging story that you could possibly be, because you're effectively ancillary to the most important pieces of the story. You're the guard that they can kill in the convoy because you're that guy.
You are that guy. You are the red shirt.
Yes.
Like, it sucks. But I mean, that was Ken's storytelling, and it did not jive with us. It simply didn't. And
I mean, a lot of these things just don't translate well into a game where you have other people who are playing effectively, people with emotions and feelings and direction for their character and different motivations. Like, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't.
And so, I mean, you do really have to make sure that. So often I would do this is I would be like, this is the story. It's so good. Everyone's going to love this story. And I would just be like, here it is. Just cram it in your face. And like the how little I knew.
Whitewash of story. Just shoving my face in the snow of the story.
How little I understood about it when I look back on it and I go, man, those are all bad stories.
You know what I just realized? It's kind of cool to sorry, I just off the top of my head. We have listeners in other states that don't have snow. They might not know what the fuck a whitewash is. It is a thing in us northern states when there is snow on the ground that you will hold down a person that you may or may not be friends with and bury their face in the cold, cold snow.
Isn't whitewashing also when you paint a fence white?
I don't know. I don't paint fences.
Okay, I just
paint my chicken coop. Go to hell.
If anyone knows that, yeah, go ahead and throw it out there.
There you go. There's some northern. It's cool when you go to other states where they don't like. I go to other states where they don't understand like northern dialect, where you say shit like whitewashing, and they're like, "What the fuck is that?" Like, okay, you've never seen snow. Gotcha. Okay, you live in a subtropical paradise. It's weird. But back to your point, I would definitely say if you are guiding your players, through a story, that you really need to take a hard evaluation of that. In the end, the story. I have built a lot of stories, and this is another thing. And it's funny. It's a quote that Brian actually came up, and he looked at me one day because I was doing a story where the theme was rain, cold, dark.
Can't rain every day, Jared.
Brian looks at me and says, "Jared, it can't rain every day. It's meteorologically impossible." And it was a good point. And I took that to a broader stance of, you can't have the same goddamn theme every day.
If you look back at our last couple episodes, I mean, we talked about, how do you change your game? How do you come up with the next game topic? That's along that lines. You don't want to tell the same story over and over and over again.
Nope.
And then also, you say the measure of what your game is fun, and you look back at checking in with your players. That's the key here, is you're making sure your players are having fun. And the problem is that if you're telling a story and you're not looking at what your players are, if your players are having fun early, okay, and you're telling a story that everybody hates, or you're trying to just tell a story because you love the story, what you're going to find really fast is that, you're going to go 8 sessions in, okay, because players are often, I shall say, too kind to keep playing in a game that they dislike because you might be their only GM. They might have no other options.
They might not be able to go to a local comic shop. You
might put up with a crap game for 6, 7, 8 sessions, but when your players start, then when you have Dave and Susie and they're starting to skip game or they're coming in late, like
these are indicators.
These are indicators that, oh, by the way, maybe I'm telling a story that nobody likes, and maybe I'm not giving my players the freedom to do the things that they really like. Maybe you haven't explored their motivations. Maybe you haven't spotlighted any of the characters. Maybe you're only spotlighting one of the characters.
Yeah, that's okay. I've done that. Been there, done that. Got the T-shirt.
So I mean, again, you're trying to avoid putting your plot line forward, and if it is that case, like only one character has the necessary skills to execute the plot line, your plot line is flawed.
Huge,
because you don't need any of the other players at the table besides Dave. Dave's your player. He's my guy.
This story was all about him. And even when you are creating stories that revolve around a singular character, like a history story, like a player's like, I really want to dive into the background. Those stories are really difficult to tell. And you really have to be very, very, very careful about giving spotlight moments to the other players and how you're going to execute that. I would always advise away from that, telling the story about a single player because you think it's a cool idea. And it's funny, I think we just talked about getting wrapped up in an idea. We just talked about I think our last podcast about getting wrapped up in an idea. And it's so hard to disengage from that. It really is. Before every game, before every session, you should be analyzing what you're doing. Are my players having fun? Am I giving spotlight moments? Am I doing this, and this? You don't have to do it before game that session and sit there and go, and you don't have to go beating yourself, like, oh my God, I'm not doing this, but I'm saying a thorough analysis, during your maintenance period of like, okay, what am I missing nowadays? Or what am I really doing good at? Man, my players they're walking away with all smiles. I did a check-in with them.
Even if your players are walking away with all smiles, there's always room to improve and correct and fix things. So what you're going to notice is you're going to go, man, everybody walked away. They loved that session. But I realized I'm missing some points here as to why this plot point connects or why this person knows these details. You're going, this isn't going to work forever. I need to either shore up this character or I need to introduce another character or play NPC that is there to give the players more information so they can get all the details and maybe marry the two concepts.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to always tighten up the loose ends in every maintenance entrance because your players are going to find every single goddamn loose end you've got. Okay, they're gonna do it without fail. I've never found a situation where
they're not even gonna do it maliciously. They're gonna stumble upon
it. They're gonna do it like a bunch of a bunch of young kittens looking around because Jared's got kittens, so we're gonna use them here again. They're just wandering around, just curious, just not quite sure what's going on, and you're gonna fancy dance your way through it. But you're gonna get to the end of it, you'll be like, shit, like I didn't think about that at all.
Fuck, that angle was not covered. So really when it comes down to story versus success, like I look at it and I will pitch everything overboard to ensure success. You know what I mean? Like I will do what it takes. Sometimes this might take serious retooling. You might have to tell the players like, hey guys, we're going to take a week break so I can sit down and write the shit out of some stuff, and there's to do that. I mean, like it sucks and I hate doing it, but like I've done it. I've been like, hey guys, no game this week because I got to do some fucking tooling. Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. But when it comes down to it, you have to ensure the success and the happiness of the players over your story every freaking time. because you just aren't you. Sorry, we don't play in the world of authors and writers where they control every element of the story. We don't live in the world of TV and movies where they control every part of the story and literally tell the actors what to say. It's funny. My brother works in the film industry, as I've mentioned many times. He refers to actors as talking props. He literally does. I think he's called one that before. He's like, listen here, talking prop. I mean, like, holy shit, Jay. Damn, way to demean a person. But I mean, sometimes you got to kick ass. We don't live in that world. We live in the world of tabletop RPG. We don't live in the world of video game development. We live in this world that is so incredibly fluid, and it makes us, I want to welcome you all to an idea, which is the thought that what we do is exponentially harder than a writer for a book, a television series, a movie, a whatever. What we do is so immensely more difficult because we are literally building story on the fly with the input of others. It's impromptu or improv comedy without the comedy aspect. Well, sometimes there's comedy, but you know what I mean? Like, it takes such skill, and it can go flying out the window in a heartbeat. It can literally, by your players looking all around the table and saying, you know what? Our characters are done working in Alaska. Our characters are moving to Mexico. Shit.
There goes your story.
There went everything I plot because my whole plot revolved around the Yeti.
Okay, and also, if your players are living on an island somewhere or some fantasy island you've made up, like, don't think that there's a way for them to not engage with your story.
They will find a way.
They can find a way. I mean, your players could just stop engaging. They could just become part of the local commerce of the place. And then goodbye. Kaput. Your story's done.
I will blacksmith my way off this fucking island.
Oh, there are ships that come in from off the island? Great. I'm going to stow away on one of them.
I'm going to stow away or just take it over. I have literally been part of a rebellion against a storyteller. I will totally admit it. It was the storyteller that I spent many years under. And like we all got fed up with his bullshit on this one location, and we were like, fuck it. We're stealing a ship. Like we said, fuck it. We are, and he's like, you're the heroes. And we're like, we not anymore. We're pirates. Like, we are stealing this ship. And he's like, you have a level blah, blah, blah paladin. Paladin, stop them. And literally the paladin player was like, I'm going to let this one go. I went off his island.
I'll allow it.
He's like, I'll allow it. And I mean, the storyteller, fortunately, I will, to his credit, he was an amazing at fancy dancing. Like, he was like, all right, steal a pirate ship, and next week we'd be in a pirate freaking battle. He was good at fancy dancing. Next week we'd be, the week after that, we're in a pirate battle. The week after that, we're running out of water. Like, he would develop stories quick. I was like, holy shit, we done fucked up. We done fucked, because none of us know how to operate sails and shit. Like, we don't know how to navigate. We're just going north. We essentially pointed the boat in the direction. And I mean, like, he punished us. He punished us for our rebellion. I will grant him that, but I was part of it. And the thing was, like, he eventually conceded, and we got to this other land, where he essentially started up a new story, which was, I think he heard the message when all of us were like, fuck this island. We don't, when the paladin just stands by as we're like pitching people off of a boat, the paladin's just like, yes, I will block their crossbows for you guys as you are stealing their livelihood. No, that's the level the rebellion went to, and it was a match between the players and the storytellers at that point. He punished us for a while, but in the end we won because we got off that fucking island and we went to a new place and had a new story.
Your players are ultimately always going to win.
They're always going to win.
Okay,
your only recourse is to just murk them.
Okay, when you start thinking about adversarial GMing, which is typically what ends up happening when players stop going along with your story, GMs get mad and they start becoming adversarial with their players.
Yes.
Your players, at the end of the day, are ultimately going to win. Okay? If you, one, piss off your players, they can just say, screw you, we're not playing with you anymore. Okay?
That's really bad.
Okay? And that's really bad. Okay, so if you've got a gaming group, and again, especially today, 2021 is maybe a little bit easier back in the day, where it's like, I'm all you got, bitches.
Yeah, nowadays, now it's like, fuck it, I'll
like,
join Roll20 and find some other storytelling.
Yeah, I'll go find a story group online. Like, it might not be perfect, but it's something else. It's something I can do to scratch the itch. I mean, you don't have that luxury to fight your players. Or, in every player group, there is one person who's sort of the de facto GM, but there are a lot of other people in the group who, depending on their experience, are capable of GMing. Okay, so guess what? You might be the one with the short end of the stick, and we never see you again.
And I guess like that's a good point to bring up. In the end, story will always be trumped by the players. Your story will always be trumped. Doesn't matter if you're like, no, I play in the Sneakermancer at the top of the tower. The players, if they're like, nah, we're gonna go find a ballista, and just pound this thing into dirt.
Your players will do everything to muck up your story, and they're not doing it on purpose most of the time. Okay, they're doing
Sometimes they are.
Sometimes they are. Okay, if your players start mucking up your story on purpose, then they hate your story. Go back. We've done plenty of podcasts on that. But there's a lot of times when your players are just creatively thinking.
Yes,
you've given them a problem, and if you don't give them any boundaries in which to solve the problem, okay, which a lot of GMs don't. A lot of GMs say, "This is an open sandbox. You can do whatever you want." Okay, cool. Well, we go steal a ballista and we go pelt the tower with the ballista, and it's like
until he meets us on our terms. Like that's something that actually we have to deal with a lot, or I have to deal with a lot in our group. Is my team are not stupid. My gaming group is like, fuck no, we are not beating him on his terms.
I've done stupid. I've done it several times. I've done enough stupid to stop doing it.
Granted, but my gaming group is fast enough to create hasty ambushes. You know what I mean? Like they will think creatively and be like, we are not going to meet this son of a bitch on his terms. We will have them meet us on a battlefield of our choice. And sometimes that battlefield, like Nick was the master of like, no, you will meet me on my terms and I will outplan you 6 steps.
Yes, he was. He was very good at that.
He was great at that. I mean, like he could just, nope, I'm gonna go find landmines and holy shit.
And even the one time that you had all those vampires hold up in Saoris, I mean,
he did it.
He laid siege to it.
He laid siege to a tower that I'm like, no way he can. They got millions of gargoyles, and I think he flew one of the gargoyles into the tower. Like that's how he breached the walls.
I mean, it ended up coming down to peace negotiations at the end.
It did, but the fact that they could get to that point was pretty incredible.
But your players will do extraordinary to defeat your
villain. And that's why your story will never. That's why you should always, whenever postulated with this question, do I do the success of the story, the success or the story?
You go with your game over the story. I mean,
you go with the success of the game. You go with what makes the players smile, what makes them happy, which encourages their creativity and their imagination. And rather than, well, I planned your Tolkien-esque journey and you sons of bitches roped some eagles and flew to Mordor. Because that's what they should have done in the first fucking place.
That's what your players would have done if you played Lord of the Rings with your players.
I'm just saying, like, does Sauron have anti-air? Does he got some AA guns on the ground? Because if he don't, bitch, we flying.
But
I just blew Aaron's mind.
You did.
Do you have some orcs on the ground, like operating the old World War II AA guns?
They could fire ballistas from the ground.
Okay, you know how slow a fucking ballista is? Do you know how fast an eagle is?
Touche.
Thump. Hold on, it'll be another 39 seconds before it actually hits the goddamn target. Oh, wait, the eagle just went like this. Whoosh, underneath. Fuck. All right, reload the ballista. This will take us 45 minutes. It's just, this is what your players will do to your story if your story does not meet them. In the middle, you have to remain always flexible. The story is there and it's alive. You should always trump success over the story, and you should always, always, always remain flexible. Remaining loose. Why do you think they tell you to loosen up at the gym before freaking working out? Because if you try to go with like tight freaking muscles, okay, you know, some of our listeners are probably young. They don't have to stretch before working out. I got to do like a 30-minute fucking routine nowadays. I got to stretch when I get out of bed. I never thought this day would happen. Here I am touching my toes every morning. I didn't do it this morning. My back's freaking killing me. You're laughing because my back is freaking killing me. Thanks, bro.
Sorry.
That's all I got.
I had another point, but I lost it when you brought up the fucking Eagles.
I'm just saying, Sauron does not have a strong defensive position.
That's true.
Unless that eye can shoot fucking lasers of fire. Lasers of fire. Unless it can shoot bolts of fire, he had nothing. Literally, Gandalf made them do that for nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and if anyone would say to us, you know, well, he had to become the White Wizard before, you know, he could do that, then that was Gandalf's problem. Gandalf should have engaged in a personal journey to become a White Wizard so he could order these fucking eagles. You know, thanks a lot, Gandalf. We make us trek 900 freaking miles. His plan was flawed, too. I mean, like, they could have died from, I don't know, diarrhea, dysentery. That shit happens. Especially in the Dark Ages. More people died of disease in the Civil War than gunshots. Okay? That's sick. Most of it pooping related. Look up your history books. Find out how many people died of disease compared to gun wounds. You're going to find out it's tragic. You're going to be like, holy shit.
Oh, man. All right, well, anyways, on that lovely note, go ahead and tell us your thoughts on you know, what do you think about the subject? I mean, do you tend to, everybody's got to have a story, but do you tend to favor the success of your players or the story that you want to tell? Maybe your group is unique. They tend to skew towards you know, being successful equals executing your story. Let us know. levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com.
If you think Sauron should have had a missile-based defense system, let us know.
Also, yes, please let us know about that as well. Or you can let us comment on facebook.com/levelupyourgaming, or you can message us there. We'd be happy to hear your thoughts on Sauron's missile-based defense system.
Some flak guns, I'm just saying.
Also, we are on YouTube. You can comment about Sauron's missile-based defense.
Or flat guns. I'll go with flat guns.
So go ahead and
smash that like button or hit it with an AA gun.
And go ahead and share this with your friends, your gaming group. Review us on your favorite podcast site. We do appreciate it. That's going to wrap us up for the week. So for Jared, I'm Aaron. Remember, Sauron, you don't have any air defense.
Have a great week, everyone.